somewhere in Resaca, North Georgia, as John and I are headed to Nashville for today's festivities and tomorrow's festivities. MLS is back tomorrow afternoon. Atlanta will be kicking off against Nashville at 8 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Central. Well, that's when the TV starts. It'll actually be closer to 8:30 Eastern, 7:30 Central, because Judah and the Lion will be performing for everyone, and there will be a Gibson guitar riff and all kinds of other shenanigans to kick off Nashville SC's entrance into Major League Soccer. Big deal tomorrow. Big deal last night in CONCACAF Champions League. LAFC with the best performance that club has ever had in a game that mattered. They came back against Leon, ended up winning 3-0 last night, 3-2 on aggregate. They did not concede a goal. It's an incredible performance from Bob Bradley's group to get the 3 that they needed and not concede. I think Leon was really disappointing, but LAFC, to get that done, look, I've questioned them. A lot of people have questioned them about performances in big games. They showed something last night that they have not shown in previous attempts at it. And then the flip side is Seattle, who everybody thought was fine. Everybody thought would be comfortable. Everybody thought they were comfortable late in the match. They conceded a golazo late to Olympia and then lost in a penalty shootout. And they go out. A lot of people's darlings to be the MLS team to win this tournament. They go out at the round of 16 stage to the defending Honduran champions. And John, we talked about it when the draw happened. The team that concerned me because of what they were coming off of with a Honduran championship, they won the playoff structure. Olympia went into Seattle and had maybe one of the biggest performances in recent Champions League history to get a 2-2 there and take it to penalties and win.
So then let me ask you this. When it comes to that particular matchup, I know that we were looking at Seattle and the issues at the back. Taking the sample size from what we saw and adding last night into it, what's your take on Seattle at the back now?
It's not good enough. And in general, I think Seattle's a team you have to have some questions about because they turned over 3 of their 4 starting defenders from last season. They haven't adequately replaced them. I don't think Nuhu Tolo is the option at left back to win a championship. If he was, I think he would have played more last season. Brad Smith was the guy last year. Jovan Jones, you're going to have to pull him into the back. You didn't have Nico Ladero last night, and when he's not in the team, Seattle's not the same team. The Sounders, I think there's definite questions about them early on. This tendinitis issue with Ladero, generally tendinitis issues don't go away. And when you're having them in February, I don't think it's going to be better in July. That's something that has to be a huge issue for them. Joao Paulo looks to be a really good signing. They've got a great attack with Raul Ruidiaz. But are they going to be able to do enough defensively to concede 4 goals to Olympia in 2 matches? That's a little shocking, honestly. And we can pull out all the usual tired things about, you're not in your season, you're not fit, etc., etc., etc. That didn't happen to New York City. That didn't happen to Atlanta. That didn't happen to LAFC because they fought through. They hit a wall. LAFC hit a wall at about the 60-minute mark and fought through it. It didn't happen to Montreal. Montreal found a way to get through, in my opinion, a little bit tougher opponent in Saprissa than Olympia. So all those excuses, other teams dealt with it, and other teams got through. It's the era of no excuses in CONCACAF Champions League for MLS teams. And Seattle, you have to ask questions of them. And they will be a team that has pressure on them because they're defending MLS Cup champions. But what are they going to be in 2020? And is it going to take them the first half of the year, like it usually does, to get to their best? Maybe so.
You had actually circled Olympia as a team to keep an eye on in general when it came to CONCACAF Champions League, and they showed it and reinforced it in this 2 legs against Seattle.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the defending Honduran champions. They've gotten off to a little bit slower start this year, but this is a proud club, and they've had a history with Seattle as well, and they tweeted about it last night, which was kind of funny. They tweeted and called out Brad Evans for previous shenanigans between Olympia and Seattle in CONCACAF Champions League. They were up for this, and to go to Seattle and get that result and get that late goal, it's a huge statement about the quality of the Central American teams this time around. I think maybe, that'll end up being one of the stories of CONCACAF Champions League in 2020 is how much of a fight Alianza put up, how much of a fight Comunicaciones put up, how much of a fight Olympia put up and will continue to put up. We've known about Saprissa. I think even Motagua, how much of a fight these teams put up. Portmore, out of the Caribbean, was not a pushover in the first leg, and they were looked at as potentially the weakest team here. So the CONCACAF league structure and having teams play in that in the fall leading up to CONCACAF Champions League, it is seeming to have an effect on how prepared these teams are for tougher competition. Now, I mean, it's difficult because these are teams that have far smaller budgets. They have rosters of players who are not at the same level, and they have to flip their mindset from being the heavyweights in their leagues to being the underdogs in these matches. But I think you've seen teams that are capable of doing that, and it's a good sign overall for CONCACAF. The organization should feel pretty good about how this Champions League has gone and what's to come in it.
You want to send it out for questions?
Sure. If you're listening, if you found us, tweet at us, at Soccer Down Here, at Longshoe, at OSG Nelson.
Who can't look at his phone?
Yeah, John's driving. I'm sitting in the passenger seat holding the phone, and John is driving and trying not to run off the road.
No.
Which would be bad.
That would be bad.
Very bad.
Yeah.
Later today, if you have not heard, we've got stuff on 92.9 The Game. Dukes and Bell live from Tailgate Brewery on Music Row, starting at their normal time of 2 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Central. They go for 3 hours today because Mike Conti and I are stealing the last 2 hours.
Theft!
We're taking over like the NWO, and we're doing a 2-hour stoppage time along with Jimmy Vance. We've got Darren Eales on. We've got Carlos Bocanegra on. We've got Katie Griggs on from the Atlanta United front office. We've got Jillian Sakovitz on. We've got Kelly Francis on. We've got Nashville folks on. We've got all kinds of stuff in this show. It is a jam-packed 2-hour show from 5 to 7 Eastern, 4 to 6 Central. If you're getting into Nashville at any point today, heading up for the match, come on over to Tailgate Brewery because supporters from both teams will be hanging out afterwards. It's the night before party for both sets of supporters. And that's what this match, to me, kind of feels like, is a party scenario. It's two teams that don't have any animosity just yet, although that could happen very quickly. You never know. Two teams that I think Nashville, in a lot of ways wants to be what Atlanta has been. I think they've learned some elements of what Atlanta's done. I think you'll see it in some of the game day presentation. But right now, it feels like a celebration, and I do think that'll change, and I do think it'll be different next year for Atlanta and Charlotte because David Tepper's going to throw down that gauntlet already.
Yeah.
But this one, I mean, I don't want to compare it because it's the same two areas involved, but it kind of feels like a difference between Georgia and Tennessee. This feels more like Georgia and Vanderbilt if you're looking at an SEC game where it's not as contentious. We all know Nashville's a great place to go and have a great weekend. We know this. And Atlanta United fans are coming up in large numbers to do just that, but there's also a soccer match involved, and you're going to get an Atlanta United traveling support that will rival what the University of Georgia sends up to Nashville. Could be more than what the Falcons have sent up to Nashville for games with the Tennessee Titans. So this has a really big game feel, but not a contentious feel.
Yeah, and that's how I'm looking at it. With the carpet being rolled out by Nashville for MLS, and you're seeing, I mean, you and I talked about it on the show yesterday, trying to figure out how many folks were thinking were going to show up at Nissan, somewhere between 56 and 58,000, which hats off to Nashville and everybody who wants to have this as a part of their storytelling. It's like, yeah, I was there when. And I'm looking forward to seeing the game day experience, all the experience and the exposure and what Nashville's take is and their twist on it because of what we've seen with the Gibson guitar and Judah and the Lion and all these things that they want to make their own as a part of it. So that's what I'm looking forward to, I guess, the social aspect of it all. And first time out of the blocks, just you want it to go off as well for a national television audience as it possibly can. And I'm looking for Nashville to show out in a public sense and for Atlanta United to come out on top in the balance sheet.
Joey Logan is liking the car ride sound in the background. Well, it's authentic, Joey. It's legit.
It is legit.
We are driving past Tunnel Hill right now. Dalton Rocky Face exit. It's starting to rain a little bit, so you're going to get some rain sound too, because that's what's happening. Chris Hutchison's with us. He's enjoying it. Is this a great country or what? Mobile SDH. Ricky Ricardo asks, what are y'all's memories of Atlanta's first game and everything leading up to it? I'm sure Nashville fans are pretty hyped. What about you, John?
Wow. Just all of the hope that was attached to it, all of the ideas of all of this time and all of this work put on by a tremendous amount of folks to get it to that day one, for all of the fans and the supporters groups that put in all of the effort to make sure that it had Atlanta's flavor for it, for Atlanta United. And then obviously, you know, when goals are scored and the roof comes off of a roofless Bobby Dodd, that's always a plus. So, just the whole vibe of the day and taking it all in. And so that's part of the enjoyment of it for me, you know, as we were talking earlier, just the notion of seeing how a city responds and wraps itself around the newest thing that's happening in town. We've seen what Nashville will do with the Titans. We've seen what Nashville will do with the Predators. You know, we'll see. I was about to say Vanderbilt. When Vanderbilt comes close to being bowl eligible for football, you see the excitement of a coach.
Hey, Vandy's got a great basketball program.
Ask Jerry Stackhouse about that. Yeah. So, just to see how Nashville responds to something like this, that to me is the biggest part in comparison to what we got to see at Bobby Dodd.
So it was a weird week for me leading up to the first Atlanta United game. I mean, it was coming off of the Carolina Challenge Cup, and you know, the excitement was building. There were, you know, reports everywhere. There was talk everywhere. I got the offer to do radio on Thursday, and Friday was the media day, and everything was still coming together with the radio deal, so it wasn't even officially announced yet. But going to the media day, seeing how many people were there, for me, I'll always remember the game day because I got there as early as possible to get into the stadium. I did a hit on 92.9. There's I think like a 3-hour pregame show from the stadium. Yeah. And I did a hit with them and then went on in. And getting there so early, seeing people in kits, in jerseys, that surprised me. But just sitting in the booth and watching the stadium fill up, that was the coolest thing for me. And looking out at a full venue in red and black, and mostly in red and black stripes, because most everybody was wearing the kit, which was just wild. It was, I mean, I was nervous about, you know, doing radio and doing the match and everything going into that. So I was trying to stay focused, but there'd be little moments where I could kind of lose myself in it and look out and try to capture the moment, you know, from my memories. What I remember the most is after it was all done, going back to the car, and we didn't do a post-game show. We didn't have that stuff yet. We didn't have a full pregame and postgame. So I got back to the car at a pretty decent time, and just sitting there for like, God, it felt like an hour. It was probably about 20 minutes of just trying to take it all in and say, this thing really happened. Like, that just happened. It was pretty wild. And I think for people who are involved in that way in Nashville, they'll have those types of experiences tomorrow. For Nashville soccer fans, I mean, going back to the old Nashville Metros days, there's probably a lot of them who didn't think this day would ever happen. And that was what kept going through my mind leading up to the first Atlanta United match was, when you go to pro games at Adams Stadium, when you go to pro games at Silverbacks Park, at DeKalb Memorial, to go from that to Bobby Dodd and then eventually to Mercedes-Benz Stadium, it doesn't feel real. And for Nashville supporters you go back to the Metros days, and the Metros were one of the longest running clubs in USL. They made it for a long, long time, and they played, in 1997, I went up, I was working with the Atlanta Ruckus at the time, and we went up to the match in a park. I want to say it was Ezel Park, and it was not a stadium. It was a field in a park with bleachers around it to create like some kind of a stadium vibe. It wasn't even like a high school stadium. And, there were 1,000 people there. And that was the first time I was in Nashville for an Atlanta-Nashville game. And it's just crazy to think how different it is, 23 years later. That's why when these conversations come up about, MLS and it's not that big of a deal and all this stuff, if you weren't there at the beginning of it or you weren't there before it, I don't think you can understand why it's such a big deal. Is it perfect? No, not by any stretch. There's still plenty of room to grow. You always want to have room to grow. You never want to be where, honestly, like the NFL is right now, because it's very hard to stay and maintain that level. You want to have room to grow. And MLS has a lot of room to grow, and there's things they need to do better, but the constant diminishing of the product. Hey, I'm with Chicharito. You got to respect what's going on, and you got to respect where this has come from. And I think if you went through it, if you watched, professional matches in a park with metal bleachers that are about 5 rows high, if you watched it, in a high school stadium that's all just a concrete slab, if you watched games in those areas, if you watched the early days of MLS and it was all over the place and chaotic, and there'd be these small crowds in huge venues and teams are signing players randomly here and there, and it's just all over the map, you have to respect where it is now. It doesn't mean you give it a pass on everything, but, and there's Don Garber calling John because, we're MLS shills.
Yes.
But it's just frustrating when I don't think that progress is respected. And on the eve of the 25th season for the league, it's very, very important to note that progress. Nashville coming in is huge progress. Nashville was never a city that was looked at as a professional soccer city in the first division level like this. Never. The Metros were never looked at as a club that could go up like that. Nashville wasn't a city that would have been thought that way. Charlotte is another one that wouldn't have been thought that way. It wasn't mentioned at the beginning of MLS. It wasn't talked about as a future MLS city. And that's the growth of this game. And MLS is a big part of it. It's not the only one, but it's a big part of it. And for, kids in Nashville who are 5, 6, 7 years old and they start to play soccer at the YMCA, and now they're going to have local heroes to follow. You're going to have kids who want to be Dax McCarty. You're going to have kids who want to be Joe Willis. You're going to have kids who want to be Hani Mukhtar. That's massive. And it's just like we've seen in Atlanta, where you have kids who go to soccer practice and want to wear their Joseph Martinez jersey, and they want to do his celebration, and they want to be the guys that they watch representing their city on a regular basis. That's what this is all about, and that's what's so special about tomorrow, and that's what's so special about today and the celebrations that all take place. Chris Ashley doesn't have a question, but has a recommendation for all the hashtag food takes we all love hearing.
Especially mine.
No, nobody wants to hear yours, John. You don't get to contribute to Nashville must-eats. So the must-eats from Chris Ashley are at 5_daughters, Martin's Barbecue, and Adele's Nashville. All right, I don't think I'm going to be able to hit all three, Chris, but I will make an effort to hit one for lunch tomorrow, depending on timing and locations and what works. So I'm going to pick from those three, Chris, and I will report back. John probably won't contribute.
No.
He'll probably eat at McDonald's tomorrow.
Well, I do want to eat at White Castle on the drive home in Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
That's fine. That's White Castle's a whole different category. I did not know there was a $5 at Ponce City Market, so I'll skip that one since I can go. Kev C says, snow on those mountains. I have not seen any snow in the mountains.
We're in Ringgold right now and have not seen any, although it is 42 degrees here in Ringgold, Georgia at 22 minutes after the hour.
And there's no need to drop any construction pins on the internet maps just yet. I think it's all been smooth sailing up to exit 350. So all is well if you're heading out a little bit later.
All is well! So far.
Yay. JB, what's up, Joe Bost? Don't get, or he says do get caught. I hope he says don't get caught. Don't get caught by the police. I'm going to edit you, Joe.
Yes.
If you do, don't let John talk. He may get you in jail with bad food takes or something. That is true. That is absolutely true. Joey Logan, memories of the first night at Bobby Dodd. He says, I'll never forget the roar when Yamil scored, the groan when Miggy's chip was saved, the pickup chant of ATL when Atlanta United went behind. Everyone was standing, chants were happening, and the crowd was into every kick that night. See, that's something, doing, what I was doing that night and just trying to stay so focused. I didn't notice it as much. The clap I did notice, that immediately stood out to me. The rest of it, it was kind of in the background for me, and when I went back and watched highlights and watched some extended parts of the game, that's when I noticed how loud it was and how intense it was. But at times you kind of block it out. It's like you feel it more than you actually hear it. And it was like that when I played too. Like you know people are there, people are yelling, but you don't pick out detail. It's like you just feel when it hits a certain level. That's how games can get at times. Tuesday night, for example, crossed over that. Tuesday night for me, I noticed multiple times how freaking loud it was. We kept having to adjust the volume in our ears because it was so loud on Tuesday night. Chris Hutchison says, put together a poll on where you should eat tomorrow. The people will not steer you wrong. I don't know about that. The people might steer me wrong. I trust the people. I don't trust John to tell me where to eat. I'm not doing that one.
No.
White Castle's fine. That's the only pick John gets on the weekend. That's it.
Hey, that's perfectly fine with me.
That's it. I'll try to do something for lunch tomorrow, because tomorrow for me, we're gonna do an hour-long show in the morning. We'll give predictions and all that then. It'll be at 10 o'clock in the a.m. We'll be done at 11. Yes, 10 o'clock Eastern time. We'll be done at 11 Eastern time, and then I'll grab some lunch and finish up my studying and my notes before heading over to the stadium. I like to get to the stadium early and get, kind of buckled in. It's a new stadium for me to call a game from. I've been here for games before, but never in the press box. So want to get settled, want to get set, all that good stuff.
Sounds like a plan.
Yes, it does sound like a plan.
Now, when it comes to Nashville, you want to talk about Nashville, or do you want to talk about Leon and LAFC?
You pick.
Well, since we're talking about first days, let's talk about Nashville. You have maintained that Nashville is pretty strong down their spine, and I would maintain at points that they're pretty strong along the T, along the back line and the spine. What's your preview and your gut about Nashville and what we're going to see from Gary Smith?
I think they'll be somewhat conservative tomorrow. I don't know if he's settled on what his attack's going to look like just yet. I think it'll be 3 central midfielders with McCarty, Godoy, and Derek Jones, because Jones gives you an attacking element, but he can defend better in that role than a Hani Mukhtar can. Mukhtar will probably slide out to the wing. I don't know who's going to start up top. I'm going to go with Baji would be my guess. I'd like to see Rios get the opportunity. But I think it's going to be a team that's going to be smart defensively, and they're going to look to hit on the counter. They're going to try to use Randall Leal's speed down the left side. They're going to try to find Mukhtar in spaces to let him create. Baji can get in behind, but he can also play as a little bit of a number 9. So it'll be a tough team to break down. I don't think they're going to take a whole lot of chances. I think they're going to be safe first. It's a different strategy than I think we've seen a lot of teams come in. I think Gary Smith, having been in MLS, the experience that he's had, he knows what's coming. He knows how to deal with this, and he's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna risk anything big in game 1. It's tough for Nashville. I mean, they don't have the same level of talent as Atlanta, and they don't have the attacking talent that Atlanta does. So I think they're gonna try to find the balance between defending and getting numbers behind the ball, but also having a way out to entertain their home crowd, because it's going to be a big Nashville crowd tomorrow. It's a big opportunity to make a first impression, but Gary's also not going to risk a blowout by playing a back and forth game with Atlanta, because I don't think he has the talent to do that. I don't think he's got the players to play straight up with Atlanta United. And it's their first game, I think he's going to be smart, safe, look to hit on the counter. He's got Leal with speed. He's got Mukhtar's ability, and he's got Baji with speed. So 7 behind the ball, try to get out when they can. I don't think he's going to risk anything major.
Okay. Because, for me, knowing Gary and what we've seen with his time at Nashville over the last couple of years, and with what we saw with him in Atlanta, and with Atlanta with their quick turnaround from CONCACAF Champions League, I was thinking if Gary has it his way, it's going to be low scoring. It's going to be 1-0, 2-0, somewhere in there.
No, I want to make one thing clear. I think Gary Smith's got a bit of a bad rap about being a defensive manager. I don't think he's a defensive manager. I think he is a pragmatic manager, and I think he knows when you've got the ability to open it up and go, and when you don't. And this is a game where, look, I don't think he does. I think he needs to grow into this a little bit with this team. I think they need to come together a little more and get some games under their belt before they can really get expansive. So he's going to be careful here, but I don't think Nashville is going to be a defensive team. My question about Nashville is more about who's going to end up winning the job up front. Who's going to be the guy up top? Is it Baji? Is it Dunladi? Is it Rios? I'd like to see Rios get the opportunity because I think he's the best goal scorer of the group. But Dunladi and Baji give you some different things, more of a well-rounded game. And that might be needed in the early going where you're just not going to create as many chances as you will later on.
And I'm trying to think of what else to talk about. When you looked at Nashville from all of their time in assembling a team to where they are now, I guess what are some of your takeaways about the roster in general past the starting 11, getting toward the 18, and developing what we're going to see with Nashville SC?
That's the hardest thing, for an expansion team is you've got to focus on the front end of the roster. You've got to get that talent, and they've still got some designated player spots to work with. The back end of the roster can be a little more of a challenge, and you have to take some risks on it. You've got guys that Gary Smith knows from his time in Nashville, Taylor Washington, Matt LaGrassa, Ken Tribbett. You've got some guys who have moved up. You've also brought in Brian Anunga from Charleston, a player that I like a lot. I think he can be an MLS-level talent. You've got talent. You've got a lot of talent. You've got guys who are, looking at potentially being a guy who can make a name for themselves in MLS who haven't had the opportunity before. but you've also got some veteran leadership to help that happen, and that's going to be really important. A guy like Anunga, a guy like LaGrassa, who have been USL championship players, they're going to be playing and training with Dax McCarty, with Anibal Godoy, two veterans of MLS, also players with international experience, guys who are going to help these young players grow. Lovitz is going to help a guy like Taylor Washington adjust. You've got both. And it's been, for me, an intelligently constructed roster on a number of different levels. Traffic update. If you're driving this way and you're behind us leaving Atlanta, it slows down in Chattanooga like it always slows down in Chattanooga. Nothing new, but yes, it's slowed down as we get close to the Tennessee line.
Right at exit number 1.
Always happens. It's nothing new.
Oh, that's right. Don't we get to drive by the site of the Red Wolves project?
I guess.
I think it's over here, isn't it?
I guess. You're getting really excited about it.
Mm-hmm. Because if it's developing and the Red Wolves are supposed to be in the Martino extravaganza later this season, I just want to see what we're looking at here with development.
I did not know the time frame for it. I didn't know if they were getting in there this season or next.
I thought it was this season.
You might be right.
Like in April or something.
You could be right. I am not sure on that one. I've been deeper into the Swedish First Division and the Mexican Second Division and the Honduran First Division.
Yes, you have.
More than the American Third Division lately, and I got to get caught up on those sorts of things as USL League One gets close to getting underway. DeAndre Jackson says, "Hey guys, I must be right around you because that alert about traffic in Chattanooga hit me right as I hit the traffic." I think you're a little behind us, DeAndre, so thanks for listening.
Yeah, I think we are officially crossing the Tennessee line. We're at the 24-75 split.
Yes, we are at the exit 2 spot, and it is the Tennessee Technology Corridor as we are reading signs that we're driving past. It's exciting. Lanes are shifting. It's chaos. Mass confusion.
Dogs and cats.
Yes, that too. That is happening.
Yes.
Okay. For those of you who did not hear the interviews on 92.9 The Game yesterday with members of the different supporters groups, the official supporters groups for Atlanta United, those are all up on the Off the Woodwork folder on your favorite podcatcher. So go check those out. The Faction, Resurgence, Terminus Legion, Footy Mob all made appearances in the 92.9 The Game studios yesterday. Those are always fun. I know Resurgence was on last night with Chuckery, and I have not heard that one yet. And Will Bowron and Chuckery, I could really see having an interesting connection. So I need to go listen to that one when we're done. It's wild that we're getting ready for another MLS season, and for me, it feels like the most open MLS season that we've ever seen. And I don't know, maybe that's different than a lot of the experts out there who have all but given the championship to LAFC already. I don't think it's that easy. I think we saw some of the frailties of LAFC against Leon. I think defensively they're going to have some issues. I want to see how they manage issues that are going to come up with Diego Rossi. I mean, is he going to go in the summer window? I'm a little surprised he didn't go before the season started. Brian Rodriguez is drawing attention in Europe. Is he going to go at an early age? Edward Atuesta, is he going to get sold? You added guys like Cifuentes, you added guys like Chanella in that central midfield. You've got the pieces to weather it, but when you start changing the chemistry around, it's not always the same. And I still think that without Adama Diomande right now, without Bradley Wright-Phillips right now, they are not as strong in the attack with Vela as the number 9 or with Rossi as the number 9. They made it work last night, and it took a while, but they did find a way through. But when you have that number 9 and you put Vela back on the right wing where he can cut in on his left foot, you're going to have to sit somebody. And is that Rodriguez? Is that Rossi? I mean, you don't want to sit either one. How do you make all the pieces fit if you're Bob Bradley. And I thought Matt Doyle had a really good point in his tiers column, which is always a good read, MLSsoccer.com. I like that approach of, not doing a number 1, number 2, number 3 right now, because it's borderline impossible and you're just pulling numbers out of a hat. But you can divide the league into groups of top teams, middle teams, bottom teams. You can do that right now. And in his LAFC section, he talked about how some teams can have too much talent. And then you start to get weird things go on with guys who aren't playing and getting frustrated and trying to find the balance. And when you put this guy that's talented in place of this other guy who's talented, it can change the group. It can change the dynamic. It can be hard. And Bob Bradley's going to have a different challenge on his hands this year. I just wonder how they're going to navigate the transfer situations and when guys leave and new guys come into the team on a regular basis, how it changes the fit. So LAFC has every potential to be as good as they were last year, but they ultimately didn't win it last year either. So I don't think anybody's a clear favorite. I really don't. I think in the West, it's LAFC. I'm very high on Portland and Kansas City. I know the takes on those two are kind of all over the place. I have had Seattle kind of in the next grouping. I'm definitely keeping them in the next grouping after their CONCACAF Champions League performance. Although, now you don't have a distraction, so who knows, maybe it ends up helping them in some crazy way. In the East, it's Atlanta, New York, and Toronto for me as the top 6, top 3 in each conference. Then you look beyond that. Seattle's beyond that. Columbus is beyond that. New England's beyond that. Philadelphia's beyond that. RSL and Dallas could be in that next grouping. I want to see a little bit from them first. If Giuseppe Rossi's got anything left in the tank, that would be an interesting one for RSL and what it could do for them. So it feels like that top grouping, and a lot of times we do see somebody come out of the second pack and make a run and get to a final. The top 2 groups of MLS is pretty deep this time around. You're going to have a lot of matches between teams from those groups. It's the most compelling season that we're going into that I can remember in this league, where it's not 1, 2, 3 teams we're talking about. I feel like it's about 10 or 12 that are worth talking about right now.
Because you can look at each of these teams that you have in your top 2 lists, and you can sit there and give a reason why, and you can also give a reason why not. Mm-hmm. And with LAFC, you mentioned all the reasons why. With the why nots being possible transfers and the ins and outs and getting adjusted to everyone. And
defense.
Yes, defense, that too. With the age that's back there. And you can sit there and look at, once again, you can take every single team that's a part of that dozen and go check, and then a check minus with it. Sporting, for me, you look at the prospect of a healthy Sporting Kansas City and what they can be, adding Alan Pulido to that mix. And so for me, that's the big check. And then the age with those healthy players would be the check mark against it. So there's always something that's there. With RSL, it's losing the veterans and the scoring power that you did. And then the check minus is, all right, how do you integrate with the new faces and things like that? Once again, you mentioned Giuseppe Rossi. What's it going to be like between the sticks without a guy like Nick Romando? Jefferson Savarino not around. So there's always that give and take there. And the fact that we can sit here and look at a dozen guys, and oh, by the way, we're now on 24 heading on top of the hill, heading into downtown Chattanooga, and everything is cleared up now that we've chosen I-24. But you look at all of these different guys, and I think that that's part of the Palace intrigue this year with this league, that you have all these reasons, you have all these great players, but then does someone come up out of the pack and bite you? Do you sit there and have that wild card come out and be a part of the whole process? So that's, for me, the fun of it, that we get to talk about it on a daily basis with all of these different variables that could be a part of a tremendous season, with the balance that is there for a lot of teams that could make it to the top.
Okay, so Quack Quack on Twitter
Quack
has tweeted out a graphic from CONCACAF about the next legs of the CONCACAF Champions League. First leg for Atlanta and Club America, March 11th. Second leg, March 18th. First leg for Cruz Azul and LAFC, March 12th. Second leg, March 18th. First leg for New York City and Tigres, March 11th. Second leg, March 17th. And Olympia and Montreal, first leg March 10th, second leg March 17th. So Wednesday and Wednesday, if I am not mistaken, when it comes to Atlanta United and Club America.
All right, so then that means we also should plug the game of the week, yeah?
We'll go ahead and plug the game of the week. It's in a few weeks, but if you want to go ahead and plug it, have it.
Well, our next one is going to be March the 3rd. And that is going to be Parkview and Roswell from Ray Manus Stadium on the campus of Roswell High School. So that'll be the next one. Then on the 10th, it is a visit to Riverwood. And then after that, it's the first road show of the year, where it is going to be Vidalia and Toombs County. So that's the 3rd, the 10th, and the 17th. That's what it looks like.
There's your high school game of the week schedule that is coming up. We got a couple of updates from Jimmy Vance, who is ahead of us. Settle down, John. You're going to run off the road screaming. Rain with a mix of snow about an hour outside of Nashville.
What?
Yes, that's what he said.
That's not nice.
I don't think it's Jimmy's fault.
43 degrees here in Chattanooga.
Yes.
At 43 minutes after the hour.
Ay, Dios mío. Malpin Joe says, are you guys catching wind of the pain Sinclair Media is causing us streaming live TV, folks?
Yes.
No Fox Sports South, nor Southeast on YouTube TV or Fubo TV now. It's like they are forcing us back to cable or satellite. We cannot add live stream to our radio call. Sorry, Malpin Joe. But I know a couple people have been very angry about this, and let me make sure I got this right, John. So the Fox regional networks have changed hands a couple of times here.
Yes.
And they have ended up with Sinclair.
Yes.
In, the last 6 months?
Yeah.
Or last year?
The last year, but the deal has to be approved by the FCC, and that's why it's been the last 6 months. So the sale went through about a year ago, but it was approved by the FCC in the last 6 months or so.
So let's walk backwards. So the Fox regionals were owned by Fox, right?
Yes.
And then they went to ESPN, Disney.
Briefly.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was the first step, though. They went to ESPN, Disney with no intention of keeping them because it was part of a bigger deal.
Right.
But they went there, and it was just a holding pattern, and then it was Sinclair who ended up buying all of them, or most of them?
I think it's all of them.
Okay. So now Sinclair has taken over, and you've started to see some changes. This is probably the first big one where you have rights fees being negotiated, and not being negotiated very well, because they've not come to an agreement. And will that change? I think it will, because I don't know ultimately long term if it's a smart move for a Sinclair to not have stuff available on streaming, but you're going to have to come to, decisions here on both sides. And what's hard is deals that teams signed with these were potentially with leadership 2 owners ago. So, I mean, when you talk about it from a team perspective, they're out of it. They have nothing they can do about this because they signed contracts, in some cases, with the original Fox owners, and now you've had 2 different owners come through, and you're kind of stuck.
Sinclair, for reminders, Sinclair also owns the Tennis Channel. So something to keep in mind on 2 fronts here is we're talking about multiple lanes of sports broadcast traffic. One, the regional sports networks are tied to properties that have to do with baseball, basketball, hockey, soccer. It's big product. It's big product, and it's a lot of the
College sports?
Yes, in college sports that are brought in from Fox and their contracts as well. How much of that carries over is anyone's guess. But what you're looking at is a lot of content that takes up a lot of the revenue for these regional sports networks. Don't be surprised if a part of this negotiation is by Sinclair to try to get Tennis Channel on more televisions than it currently is. The regional sports networks, they are the fabric of what we've seen across the country as far back as we can all remember when it comes to Fox Sports content. And I know that, I think it was Ricky Ricardo who was looking for the breakdown after we did the top 10 media deals, for top 10 market media deals for MLS, for all of the others, and that's coming down the pike. I've got to look at it. But don't be surprised as a part of this deal is that there's a negotiation in there to benefit Sinclair. And that's what Sinclair wants to do. Sinclair wants to make sure that they can drive up their subscriber fees per household. Because when you look at an ESPN, you're talking about, last time I checked, I think it was $1.50 a household for just ESPN in and of itself.
I think it's a lot more than that.
So if it's a lot more than that. Last figure that popped into my head was $1.50. But then you're talking ESPN2, ESPN News, SEC Network. Remember, the ACC Network isn't a part of a lot of cable systems these days because of clearances and rights fees. So Sinclair is looking out for their bottom line, trying to boost the notion of we need higher subscriber fees, and the cable companies and the other carriers, they're balking right now at that notion. So that, to me, is, I think, probably one of the more underlying ideas that we're going to be looking at here is Sinclair, yes, they want more money out of this deal, and the current carriers are like, nah, that's not going to happen right now. It's probably going to end up somewhere in the middle, but it's going to take some time.
All right, let's see if we've got a few more tweets before we let you go as we start getting into the mountains, because we probably won't have a choice about letting you go.
Right.
Joey's excited about Vidalia and Toombs and that matchup in our high school game of the week series.
I mean, when you have a goal scorer that had 90 goals last year for Vidalia to get you to a state championship?
Yes, Maddie Owen on the girls' side, 90 goals as a sophomore.
Amazing stuff to see that come through the pipe. And to get that rivalry game, it's also big.
How big is the rivalry between Vidalia and Toombs?
In all of the other sports, if you carry it over, I know what it is in football, but if you can carry it over into basketball and soccer, you can only imagine what it's going to be like. And for me, I think it's cool that it's going to carry itself into soccer with what we've seen from Maddie O in the last year and a half.
Yeah, I think both of those are going to be fun teams to check out. I want to see how Maddie Owen's looking in her junior season, see if she can follow up on a 90-goal season. Can she get to triple figures? That would be nuts. That's about it for the first version of the road show. We might drop another one before things happen with 92.9 later today. If you guys have questions, go ahead and tweet them at us. I should have Twitter facilities here. I don't know. We're getting into the mountains, so I have no idea what we're going to get.
South Tennessee coming up.
Yeah, we're going to be getting into this, so we'll drop coverage, and it'll be intermittent. So if you're coming through Chattanooga, expect a little bit of traffic. You get on the other side, it's fine. If you get closer to Nashville, as Jimmy Vance said, you're looking at some snow, some rain, about an hour out of Nashville. So we're about 2 hours out of Nashville, maybe 2.5.
He's probably up in the mountains when he got it.
Yeah, so we're a little bit further out. So if you're heading this way, be careful. Come see us at Tailgate Brewery at Music Row, and we'll be talking to you later on today. Thanks, y'all. Mucho plata, y'all.
2 hands on the wheel, y'all.